Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something you all have been asking about, resilience in health. Specifically,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of requests to look into how people
Right.
not just bounce back from tough health situations,
Yeah.
but use those challenges to actually grow
Absolutely.
and find new meaning.
Yeah.
So kind of inspiring stuff. And get this.
Okay.
Our primary source for this deep dive is a
Right.
podcast episode
Interesting.
about resilience.
Okay.
So it's like a double dose of inspiration.
It is fascinating how we can gain insights from analyzing
Right.
both the content of a podcast and the lived experiences of its guests.
Yeah, we're going to be hearing from Selma Blair,
Wonderful.
who has been incredibly open about her journey with MS,
Yeah.
and the late Dr. Stephen Hawking, who lived with ALS for decades.
Amazing.
Talk about role models for resilience.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to understand that in this context, resilience isn't just about gritting your teeth and bearing it.
Yeah.
It's about adapting,
Right.
evolving, and
Yeah.
even finding moments of joy in the midst of difficult circumstances.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. In the podcast, Selma Blair says that for her, resilience is about accepting where I am
Okay.
and finding ways to move forward. That really resonates with me because it highlights that resilience isn't about pretending everything is fine.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the reality of your situation
Yes.
and making a conscious choice to keep going.
What's powerful about that statement is that it emphasizes agency.
Right.
Even when facing a serious health challenge,
Yeah,
you still have the power to choose how you respond,
absolutely.
how you move forward.
She also talks about celebrating the little victories. She emphasizes how crucial it is to recognize and celebrate those small wins,
Yeah.
especially when dealing with a chronic illness.
I find that concept incredibly insightful. It reminds me of the psychological principle of positive reinforcement.
Oh, interesting.
Each small victory releases a bit of dopamine,
Okay.
which reinforces positive behaviors and helps us stay motivated even when facing larger challenges.
So it's like those little victories aren't just feel-good moments.
Right.
They're actually rewiring our brains to be more resilient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that ties in beautifully with a concept Dr. Hawking championed,
Okay.
shifting focus from limitations to possibilities. He once said, "Although I cannot move and I have to speak through a computer in my mind, I am free."
That's such a powerful image of mental freedom.
It is.
It makes you wonder how much of resilience is about overcoming those mental barriers we create for ourselves. It's like even if our bodies are limited, our minds can still be boundless.
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
Dr. Hawking's life is a testament to the power of mental freedom, of choosing to focus on what's possible rather than what's not. And while his experience was unique, I think that principle applies to all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of our circumstances.
Absolutely. It makes you think what mental barriers are holding you back, and how could embracing that sense of mental freedom open up new possibilities in your life?
What's fascinating is that even with their very different challenges, both Blair and Hawking emphasized the importance of support systems.
Okay.
They didn't view resilience as a solo endeavor.
You're right. Selma Blair talks about leaning on her support system, family, friends, a community of people who understand what she's going through.
Yeah.
She specifically says, resilience doesn't mean you have to be strong all the time.
Right.
It means you keep going even when it's hard.
Absolutely.
And she really emphasizes the fact that it's okay to ask for help.
I'm glad you brought up that quote. It challenges the misconception that resilience is about solitary strength.
Yeah.
It highlights the interconnectedness of resilience, the importance of recognizing when and how to seek help, and leveraging the tools and resources available to us.
It's about understanding that asking for help is not a sign of weakness,
Right.
but actually a key part of building resilience.
And it's interesting to consider this from a neuroscientific perspective.
Okay.
When we connect with others,
Yeah.
our brains release oxytocin,
Oh, wow.
a hormone associated with bonding and stress reduction.
Interesting.
This suggests that strong social connections can actually buffer us against the negative effects of stress,
Wow.
contributing to our overall resilience.
So not only does having a support system make us feel better emotionally, it might actually be making us more resilient on a biological level.
It is.
That's pretty amazing.
And if we think about Dr. Hawking's experience,
Yeah.
he often credited his family, caregivers,
Right?
and the technology that allowed him to communicate and continue his work as being essential to his resilience.
He said it matters that you don't just give up. And he was able to live a long and fulfilling life But he didn't do it alone.
Right.
He had a network of people and resources that helped him keep going.
And his story highlights that sometimes building resilience involves adapting our environment and using tools to help us overcome challenges.
Absolutely.
Whether that's seeking therapy, joining a support group,
Yeah.
or utilizing assistive technology.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to face everything on our own.
This is such a powerful reminder that resilience isn't about being a lone wolf.
Yeah.
It's about understanding your limitations, celebrating small wins,
Hmm.
finding your support network, and focusing on what's possible.
Absolutely.
It's about adapting, evolving,
Yeah.
and finding ways to thrive, even when faced with incredibly tough circumstances.
What stands out to you so far about the ways Blair and Hawking approached resilience?
You know what strikes me is this, despite their very different situations, both Blair and Hawking seem to embrace this idea that resilience isn't just about survival. It's about finding meaning and purpose, even in difficult circumstances.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that spark,
Yeah.
that drive, that something that makes you say, okay, despite all of this, I'm going to find a way to make my life matter.
Yes. And what's remarkable is that they both found that sense of purpose in vastly different ways.
Right.
Blair, through her advocacy and continued work in the entertainment industry,
Mm-hmm.
and Hawking through his groundbreaking scientific discoveries,
Yeah.
it highlights that meaning and purpose can be found in a multitude of ways, and that those sources of meaning become anchors in challenging times.
This brings up a really important question for our listener.
Okay.
What gives your life meaning? What are those things that you're passionate about, that you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
that drive you forward?
Yeah,
Because those are the things that will fuel your resilience when times get tough.
absolutely. Identifying those sources of meaning,
Yeah.
whether they're related to your work, your relationships,
Right.
your hobbies, or your personal values,
Mm-hmm.
can be incredibly empowering. It's
Right.
like creating a mental reserve of strength that you can draw on when you need it most.
And this is just the beginning of our deep dive. There's so much more to explore about how we can all cultivate that kind of resilience in our own lives.
Stay with us as we continue unpacking the wisdom of Selma Blair and Dr. Stephen Hawking,
Yes.
and discover how their insights can help us all become more resilient in the face of life's challenges.
Absolutely.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Sounds good. So we just touched on how Selma Blair and Dr. Hawking both found meaning and purpose, even while facing incredible challenges. But what's fascinating is how they didn't just focus on, like,
Right.
grand accomplishments, but also found joy in the everyday.
Yes, Blair often talks about appreciating those little victories.
Right.
It reminds us that when you're dealing with a chronic illness or major life changes, it's easy to fixate on what you've lost or what's difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but consciously choosing to acknowledge and celebrate small wins can shift your entire outlook.
It's like training your brain to look for those sparks of positivity, right? Instead of dwelling on what's out of your control, you're actively seeking out things to be grateful for,
Wow.
no matter how small they might seem.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in mindset.
Right.
And research actually supports this idea.
Oh, really?
Studies have shown that practicing gratitude
Okay.
can have tangible benefits for our mental and physical well-being.
Interesting.
It can lower stress hormones, improve sleep quality, and even boost our immune system.
So those little victories aren't just making us feel better in the moment.
Right.
They're actually contributing to our overall resilience in a very real way.
Exactly. And, Dr. Hawking's story is an incredible example of finding meaning and purpose despite facing profound limitations.
Yeah.
Diagnosed with ALS in his early 20s and given only a few years to live.
Wow.
He went on to live for decades, making groundbreaking contributions to
It's
science
amazing.
and inspiring people all over the world.
It's remarkable how he didn't just survive. He thrived. He continued to pursue his passions,
Yeah.
learn, grow, and connect with others.
Absolutely.
And he did it all while facing immense physical challenges.
What's truly inspiring is that he didn't let those limitations define him.
Right.
He focused on what he could control: his mind, his thoughts, his ideas, and he used those to make a real impact on the world.
Mm-hmm.
He beautifully embodied the concept of mental freedom that we were talking about earlier.
Right. It's like he refused to be a victim of his circumstances.
Mhm.
He chose to be an active participant in his own life, making the most of whatever time he had.
Yeah.
It makes you think, what would be possible if we all embraced that level of mental freedom, that refusal to let limitations dictate our lives?
It's a powerful question to consider, and while not all of us will face challenges on the same scale as Dr. Hawking,
Right.
we all encounter obstacles and setbacks in our lives. The question is, how do we respond to those challenges?
Yeah.
Do we allow them to define us, or do we find ways to adapt, grow, and move forward?
And that brings us to a really crucial point. Resilience isn't about pretending everything is okay or
Right.
minimizing the difficulty of the situation. It's about acknowledging the struggle, the pain, the uncertainty, and still choosing to find those moments of joy, those reasons to keep going.
You've hit on a core principle of resilience.
Okay.
It's not about denying the negative, but about finding ways to balance it with the positive.
Hmm.
It's about cultivating a mindset that allows you to acknowledge the difficult realities while simultaneously seeking out the good, the beautiful, and the meaningful.
That's such a powerful way to frame it. It's about finding that inner strength
Yeah.
that allows you to keep moving forward, even when it feels impossible. And sometimes it's about recognizing that you don't have to do it alone.
Well,
It's about reaching out for help, building a support system, and leaning on others when you need it.
absolutely. The resilience isn't about being a superhero who can handle everything on their own.
Right.
It's about recognizing your limits and being willing to ask for help when you need it.
And that could mean talking to a therapist or a counselor, joining a support group, confiding in a trusted friend or family member, or even just seeking out information and resources that can help you better understand and cope with what you're going through.
Sometimes just sharing your burden with someone else can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
It can help you to feel less alone, gain new perspectives, see things from a different angle, and find new solutions that you might not have considered on your own.
So far, we've explored many facets of resilience.
Yes.
Finding meaning and purpose, celebrating small victories, building a support system, and embracing mental freedom. But how do we actually cultivate these qualities in our own lives? It's one thing to talk about it,
Right.
but how do we put it into practice?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is that it's a multifaceted process.
Okay.
It's like developing any skill. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to learn and grow.
So instead of thinking of resilience as some innate quality that some people have and others don't, we should approach it as a set of skills and habits that we can all develop and strengthen over time.
Exactly. It's like building a resilience toolbox that we can draw from when we need it.
Oh.
And just like any toolbox, it's important to have a variety of tools at our disposal because different situations will call for different approaches.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some of those essential resilience tools that we should all be familiar with? What
Oh.
should we be stocking our toolboxes with?
Well, one of the most fundamental tools is self-awareness.
Okay.
It's about understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, triggers, and coping mechanisms. It's about knowing what pushes your buttons and what helps you to calm down.
That makes sense if you don't know yourself. It's hard to know how to build resilience. It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint.
Precisely so. Taking the time to reflect on your own experiences,
Mm-hmm.
to identify patterns in your behavior, and to understand what helps you to cope with stress is essential.
And that self-awareness can also help you identify your support system right.
Absolutely.
The people who you can turn to when you need to talk to vent, to get advice, or just to feel understood.
It's about being intentional, about cultivating those relationships and knowing who you can rely on when times get tough.
And it's not just about identifying those people, it's also about being willing to reach out to them when you need them. Sometimes that can be the hardest part.
You're so right. Many people struggle with asking for help. They might feel like they're burdening others or that they should be able to handle things on their own.
Right.
But that's often just pride getting in the way.
We all need help sometimes, and there's no shame in admitting that, in fact, it's a sign of strength to be able to reach out and ask for support when you need it.
It really is. It shows that you're prioritizing your well-being and that you're willing to do what it takes to take care of yourself. And speaking of taking care of yourself, another central resilience tool is self-care.
Yes, self-care is so important. It's about making time for the things that nourish you, that bring you joy, that help you to recharge.
It's about prioritizing your physical, emotional, and mental health.
Right.
It's about making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you're better equipped to handle the challenges that life throws your way.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first, before helping others. You can't pour from an empty cup.
What are some of those self-care practices that you find helpful for building your own resilience?
Well, for me, it's about finding ways to de-stress and to reconnect with myself. So that might mean going for a walk in nature, spending time with loved ones, reading a good book, listening to music, or just taking a few minutes to meditate or practice deep breathing.
Those are all great examples of self-care activities that can help to reduce stress and promote a sense of calm and well-being. And what's wonderful is that they're all relatively simple things that anyone can do.
That's right. You don't need to go on a fancy retreat or spend a lot of money to practice self-care. It's
Yeah.
about finding those small moments in your everyday life where you can prioritize your well-being.
And it's about making those moments a regular part of your routine. Consistency is key when it comes to building resilience.
Right.
It's not about doing something once and expecting it to magically transform your life. It's about making small, sustainable changes that you can stick with over time.
It's like building any habit. It takes time, effort, and repetition, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes and the more resilient you become.
Exactly. So if you're looking to build your own resilience, start by identifying one small thing that you can do each day to take care of yourself, and then commit to doing it consistently.
Okay.
Over time, you'll start to see a difference in how you handle stress challenges and setbacks.
And we've only just begun to explore the tools in our resilience toolbox. There's so much more to unpack and discover.
We'll be back in a moment to delve into even more strategies for building resilience, inspired by the remarkable journeys of Selma Blair and Dr. Stephen Hawking.
So we've been filling up our resilience toolboxes with
Yeah.
things like self-awareness and self-care,
Right.
but I'm sure there are even more tools
Absolutely.
that we can add.
And some of the most powerful tools are mental strategies,
Okay.
like the art of reframing.
Okay.
Both Selma Blair and Stephen Hawking were masters of reframing their challenges
Yeah.
into opportunities.
I love that Blair talks about finding the little victories in her life with MS.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's choosing to focus on what she can control,
Right.
what she can still achieve,
Absolutely.
rather than dwelling on her limitations.
And what's incredible is that this isn't just positive thinking.
Right.
It's backed by neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
When we focus on the positive, even small wins,
Yeah.
our brains release dopamine,
Okay.
which reinforces those thought patterns
Mhm.
and makes it easier to continue seeking out those moments of joy and accomplishment.
So it's like we're actually training our brains to be more resilient by focusing on the positive. That's so cool.
It is. And speaking of training our brains, Dr. Hawking, despite his immense physical limitations, said, however difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. He chose to focus on the vastness of the universe,
Right.
the power of his mind,
Right.
rather than the constraints of his body.
It's a powerful example of how our perspective can shape our reality.
It is.
Instead of asking, why me, he was asking, okay, what can I do with this situation?
And that shift in perspective is key.
Yeah.
It transforms you from a passive recipient of hardship into an active participant in shaping your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about denying the difficulty,
Right.
but about choosing to focus on what you can control and influence.
I love that it's like instead of being swept away by the current,
Yeah.
you're learning to navigate the rapids. You're not denying the power of the river, but you're finding ways to steer your course.
Exactly. And that's where another essential resilience tool comes in problem solving.
Okay.
Both Blair and Hawking, in their own ways, were master problem solvers.
Blair talks about adapting to her new reality, with MS figuring out new ways to do things, finding workarounds for her limitations. It's about getting creative and resourceful. And Hawking, of course, relied heavily on technology to communicate, to continue his work, to live a full life. Right. He embraced those tools as solutions to the problems posed by his condition.
So problem solving isn't just about fixing things.
Right.
It's about being adaptable and resourceful, finding ways to overcome or work around obstacles.
And that can involve anything from seeking practical solutions to more internal strategies like breaking down challenges into smaller steps, researching information and resources, or brainstorming new approaches.
It's about cultivating that can-do attitude, right?
Absolutely.
Believing that even if you don't have the answer right now, you can find it. You can figure it out.
Exactly. And sometimes the best solution involves reaching out to your support network, to experts, to those who might have faced similar challenges.
Which brings us back to that idea we talked about earlier, the interconnectedness of resilience. It's not just about individual grit. It's about leveraging the collective wisdom and support of those around us. It's a powerful reminder that even in our most challenging moments, we are not alone.
This deep dive has been so insightful. So as we wrap things up, what are the most important takeaways you hope our listener is walking away with today?
Well, first and foremost, that resilience is not a fixed trait, but a skill that can be cultivated and strengthened through practice and effort.
And that it's not about being superhuman or never struggling.
Right.
It's about having a toolkit of strategies to draw on when things get tough.
Strategies like self-awareness, self-care, reframing problem solving, and seeking support All of these can help build resilience over time.
And it's about remembering that resilience isn't just about surviving.
Mm.
It's about finding meaning and purpose even in the midst of hardship.
It's about choosing to focus on possibilities, on growth, on those things that make life worth living, even when things are tough.
It's about embracing those small victories, those moments of joy, those connections that remind us of our strength and our humanity.
It's about remembering that we all have the power within us to face whatever challenges come our way, to learn to adapt and to emerge stronger on the other side.
Selma Blair and Dr. Stephen Hawking both exemplify that each in their own way, their lives are such powerful reminders that even in the face of immense adversity, the human spirit can triumph.
And that's a message we can all carry with us no matter what life throws our way.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into resilience. And we hope it's inspired you to think about your own resilience journey and what steps you can take to cultivate this powerful skill in your own life.
Remember, the journey to resilience starts with a single step. What will yours be?